Flexibility, convenience, opportunity. Find your digital advantage in the Keeneland Digital Sales Ring. Backed by the most trusted name in thoroughbred sales. Visit KeenelandDigital.com to learn more.
Good morning. It is 9/12, Wednesday, October 6th. This is the TDN Writers Room, presented by Keeneland. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm the associate editor of the Thoroughbred Daily News. And I just want to extend a hearty congratulations to Bill Finley and his Boston Red Sox for beating the Yankees last night, while also humbly suggesting that the Green Monster should be illegal and they should get rid of single-game elimination playoffs. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, thank you, Joe. And you know what? I don't know if you're kind of being a little bit snide there, a little bit kind of, damning me with faint praise or whatever. It doesn't matter. The Red Sox won. They beat the evil team, the New York Yankees. Bucky effing Dent can go away now. Everything is fine. Everything is good. Life is good. Nothing can bother me today. My goodness, what a great night it was at Fenway Park.
Yep, you should definitely be very happy. But I still contend that is a very unjust way to settle 162 game seasons. Nevertheless, they showed up. Good luck the rest of the playoffs, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
The TDN Writers Room is presented by Keeneland. The Keeneland Fall Meet takes place October 8th to October 30th. So that starts this Friday. Get in on the action by wagering with Keeneland Select. New users receive $100 back when they wager $200 on the Fall Meet. So that's a good deal. On top of the standard sign-up bonus, you can learn more at KeenelandSelect.com and go there to sign up. All right, so the main action over the weekend, I thought, the most intriguing stuff was in the older horse division and the classic division. Was we had three, I think, pretty solid contenders for the classic strut their stuff. Medina Spirit on the West Coast and Awesome Again. We had Art Collector in the Woodward at Belmont. And then we also had Nick's Go in the Lucas Classic at Churchill Downs. Now, obviously, Nick's Go had the easiest time of it. That race was kind of, it seemed, essentially written for him. Obviously, they run the race every year, but this year, it was just a total layup on paper for him. And he did what he was supposed to do. He ran well. Got a 104 buyer, which is not up to his par, up to what you're used to seeing from him, at least in the last couple of races. Nevertheless, popped out to the front, was never challenged, and pretty easy, comfortable win under Joel Rosario. Medina Spirit, I gotta say, impressed me. I thought he was a terrible favorite in that race at 3-5. Not that it was a field full of superstars, but I just thought, first time versus elders. I wasn't a big fan of him at that price. But he proved me wrong. He ran away to a really, really impressive victory, got a 107 buyer, which is a career high for him. I thought of the three, Art Collector had the toughest trip because it was a tougher field in the Woodward than the other two races, and he was pressed along through the pace and really responded well on the stretch. And that's kind of been his thing. He's not necessarily a horse that's going to blow you away and win by 8-10 lengths, but he's a grinder. He's able to take pace pressure and keep on going. The interesting thing is that now you have three contenders that all are speed horses. Obviously, Nick's Go is the most need the lead of those three. I don't think it was a good weekend for him in that way, that, you saw that there could be some other significant speed in the classic, which I think is bad news for him. But overall, I thought all three ran well, and it just keeps adding to what is going to be a very, very good classic field when you throw in Essential Quality and Hot Rod Charlie and Midnight Bourbon and some of the real nice 3-year-olds. I think it's going to be a great clash. There were a couple other interesting results from the weekend, but I want to get Bill's thoughts on those older horses.
Yeah, let's stay with that. And Joe, looking forward to the Breeders' Cup. My goodness, what a deep race this is going to be. And I'm just jotting down names, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some here. Nick's Go, Essential Quality, Hot Rod Charlie, Medina Spirit, Art Collector. You mentioned Midnight Bourbon, Max. I think a horse like Art Collector, who's coming off a Grade 1 win in the Woodward, and looks like he's found himself again since moving into the Belmont barn. He'll probably be in the neighborhood of about 8-10-1 in the Classic, which will tell you how deep it is. To me, the horse of the weekend, and you say the older horses, he's a 3-year-old, but yes, he won a race for older horses, is Medina Spirit. And I totally agree with you, Joe. I couldn't have been more wrong about this horse going into the weekend. I didn't think he was good enough to beat those horses, and there were no killers in there, but his figures weren't that good. And he had never done anything, even though he crossed the wire first in the Derby. I thought he got, just a beautiful trip on the lead. And he came in there and really showed up and got the job done in there. And, now he's a major player going into the Breeders' Cup Classic. And to just deviate a little bit from the topic that you brought up, but another good thing that I could have been more wrong on was Bob Baffert. Last week on the show, we were all talking about what the heck is going on with the Pennsylvania Derby, or 2 weeks ago. What the heck is going on with the Pennsylvania Derby? Why is he scratching this horse? This doesn't make any sense. I mean, we use words like fishy, etc. Well, boy, did he know what he was doing. So he pulls Medina Spirit out of the Pennsylvania Derby. It blames the post, which again, it made absolutely no sense. And he comes in and wins the Austin again. Then Private Mission, he pulls out of the Cotillion, doesn't even bother to give an explanation for that. And she wins the Zenyatta. So, at the end of the day, don't doubt Bob Baffert. He knows what he is doing, absolutely. And, getting back again to the races at hand, the fact that Medina Spirit went to the lead and won wire to wire, that's a very interesting twist here. Do you go after Knicks Go early in the Breeders' Cup Classic, or do you say that's going to be a suicide mission if I do? And what kind of trip does Knicks Go get? Are there horses in this race now that have the kind of speed to take him on early? And if so, he might be vulnerable.
Yeah, well, that's the whole, that really is the crux of handicapping the Classic, I think, is whether or not you think Knicks Go is going to be able to outrun those other horses and still stick it out for a mile and a quarter. Now, I don't think that it depends on what kind of price he is, how hard I'm going to be against him. I thought for a little bit that he would be maybe 3 to 5 or 4 to 5. I think it's going to be too good of a field for him to be that short. I still think he'll be favored, maybe 8 to 5, 9 to 5, that range. So I'll probably still try to beat him. But yeah, he just, he's a need to lead type, and not that anybody is going to go out of their way to go eyeball to eyeball with him early in that race. But I think there will be enough pressure on him that he's not just going to be able to clear off and do this, merry-go-round thing that he's been doing the rest of the year. And, who knows, maybe it'll set up for a forgotten horse like Maxfield. Maxfield has been, I'm not going to say a disappointment because he's run pretty good races this year, but I think people expected him to be higher in the pecking order of the older horses, of the classic distance horses, and he hasn't really made that leap. But you never know, if there's a pace meltdown in the Classic, it could set up for a forgotten horse like him at maybe 12 or 13 to 1. So it's super intriguing. It's going to be a great Classic. Hopefully everybody stays healthy for the next month or so, and we get all the top contenders there, because it really is shaping up to be a barn burner of a Classic, and you don't always get that. A lot of years, the older horse division, the older dirt male division is pretty disappointing, and you kind of got to force your excitement for that race. But this year is definitely not one of those cases. A couple other races I wanted to mention from the weekend: the 2-year-olds took center stage at Belmont and Santa Anita as well. I thought, obviously the most impressive of the weekend was Jack Christopher. That was a very, very tough field. It was only 6 horses in the race, but you had Gunite, who won the hopeful. You had Mike Prankster, who just really didn't show up. That seemed like one of those they knew situations when he was 7 to 2. I thought he'd be way shorter than that, and he really didn't lift a foot. But Jack Christopher, I like the aggressive ride, and I like that Jose Ortiz took it to him, and he is a very, very intriguing horse. Earlier this morning, it was reported on the TDN that Coolmore and Peter Brandt have bought into Jack Christopher. So obviously those are some very high-profile, high-powered connections that also believe in him. Obviously, Coolmore is also involved with Munnings, his sire, so they have an interest in seeing him do well. And he's definitely one of the top 2 or 3 contenders for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Corniche won the American Pharaoh on Friday at Santa Anita. I wasn't quite as impressed with him. He got a very, very easy lead, and I expected him to really explode away in the stretch, and he didn't really do that. Now, it was his first start going 2 turns. It's not easy to stretch out from 5.5 furlongs to a mile and a 16th. So I'm not saying that this is that now I'm off of him completely, but just relative to the brilliance of his debut, I thought it wasn't quite as impressive. Ain't Easy was another Into Mischief grade 1 winner, or grade 2 winner in the Chandelier for Phil D'Amato. Very impressive in that race as well. I think that the 2-year-old boys are a little bit further ahead of the 2-year-old fillies right now, but Echo Zulu was again very, very dominant in the Frizette. She is a very exciting horse. I wonder if she hasn't had really that hard challenge that I think you kind of need going into the Breeders' Cup. She really has kind of had things her own way and blown away really kind of inferior fields to her, but it's impossible to knock anything she's done. She's obviously near the top of the class for 2-year-old fillies. And just one other race I wanted to mention in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. How about Dr. Scheibel with the right rein breaking and still going on to win and do it impressively? And he got a 103 buyer. You don't see that very often with a horse with a broken rein. Usually they get pulled up or they bolt or, there's some kind of issue where they're not able to run their best race. Didn't matter for him. He's a really nice horse who's come back. He kind of missed most of his 3-year-old season after being Grade 1 winner as a 2-year-old, has come back no worse for the wear and has won a couple of sprint stakes. So he's definitely an easy horse to root for as well. Bill, were there any other thoughts on the other races from the weekend?
Well, I just add to it. I mean, the City of Hope, Mo Forza just keeps getting the job done. He'll be a major contender in the Breeders' Cup Mile. I want to go back to the 2-year-olds. And, these are, I'm not saying we were down on Corniche, but I was apparently more impressed with him than you were. Again, Bob Baffert training the American Pharaoh. I mean, he just went out there and just ran away from those horses and looks like a very, very good prospect. But coming into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, if you had to pin me down today, I would take Jack Christopher over him. And one of the many things that interests me about him is, Chad Brown has had some good dirt horses. He's never won an Eclipse Award with a dirt horse. He's never won, obviously, a Kentucky Derby. He did win Preakness, but he's never had a superstar on the dirt. Now, 2 races into his career, it's a little early to call Jack Christopher a superstar, but he looks like he could be. He looks like he's heading in that direction. And it'll be very interesting to see, how Chad Brown, I don't think, he's going to make any mistakes. He's just too smart and too good. I'm sure he'll do everything perfectly, but it'll be very interesting to see Chad Brown go down the trail to the Derby with, if he wins the Breeders' Cup with an Eclipse Award winner, the early favorite for the Kentucky Derby. And, as good as he is, this would be essentially something new for him. So, we'll see what happens with that. But I'm with you, Joe. I think Jack Christopher is, the sky's the limit.
The TDN Writers Room was brought to you by Woodford Thoroughbreds. 2-year-old success starts with Woodford breaking and training. They got a lot of action this weekend coming up at Keeneland, including Pipeline Girl Friday and the Grade 1 Darley Alcibiades winning you're in for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies, as well as Saturday in the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity, which is a win you're in for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. They've got Don't Wait Up, who was an OBS April sale grad, King Carlin, who's Woodford bred and an OBS March sale grad, as well as Kevin's Folly, who's a breaking and training grad. So best of luck to Woodford this weekend and all the connections. And a constant quest to give you the clearest Bill Finley experience you can possibly get. We've relocated Bill to the basement, so I think we're good now. Before we just wrap up the weekend stuff, I wanted to talk about the ARC a little bit because it really was a fascinating story to have a 70-1 winner in the ARC, especially in an ARC field that I think a lot of people, we talked to Kelsey about it last week, that I think a lot of people felt was one of the best renewals in a lot of years. I love stories like that. And it was just the 3rd ARC win for a German horse, and the trainer Marcel Weiss just took out his training license last year. So it's always interesting to see a new trainer have that kind of success. And I love taking a shot with a horse that doesn't necessarily fit on paper. It's for the other horses. A Dyer ran well. He just doesn't want to go 12 furlongs. I don't think he went to the lead. He kind of tried to break that race open in early stretch, and it was just, overtaken a little bit late. Tarnawa and Hurricane Lane were really no disgrace. They just got beat. I thought they ran their races. And it's interesting that last year In Swoop was second in the ARC for the Germans, and probably would have been in this race if he hadn't been retired earlier this summer with a tendon injury. And Torquato Tasso was the winner of the ARC, was second to In Swoop in the German Derby last year. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that means the Germans are coming a little bit for the ARC crown in the next couple of years, next decade or so. Maybe the Germans will be more competitive than they have been historically. Interesting thing about Torquato Tasso is you go back in his female family, and his 3rd dam is a half to Urban Sea, who's obviously an ARC winner herself and is one of the best brood mares of the last 50 years, obviously produced Galileo. So the pedigree was there, you got to go back a little bit, but the pedigree was there to be, competitive on that kind of stage. The soft ground likely helped. That's usually I feel like is an angle here in the U.S. when you have boggy, soft, yielding turf is to look for the German horses because they run on it a lot. They have more experience generally than the American horses on soft turf. So obviously his form was tough to get behind against that field, but there were a few things that if you're a long shot player that you could like for that horse in that race. Obviously I didn't play him. I was just there to watch. But the disappointing horse in the race was Snowfall. She's kind of fallen off a little bit, which is disappointing because she was just so brilliant, so dominant the rest of the earlier in the year that, it sucks to see her fall off the last couple of races, but you would hope that, getting a break over the winter, she'll come back. She'll have a, really forward and impressive 4-year-old season. So we got fingers crossed for that because she was, honestly one of the most impressive 3-year-old fillies I've ever seen in some of the stuff she did earlier this year. But nevertheless, that was a very, very tough arc field. So there's no shame in running up the track a little bit there, especially if she wasn't quite at her top form. But, just going back to the idea of taking a shot with a horse that, nobody's really heard of, nobody really fancies on paper. The bettors, aren't going to give you much respect, but those are the stories that make horse racing great. The little guy who's unafraid to take a chance on their horse and getting rewarded and, spoiling the expected blue blood party, which the arc usually is. It was a terrific finish. So that was exciting. And that's kind of what makes horse racing interesting is the unpredictability, even on the biggest of stages. If you have faith in your horse and you're aggressive, sometimes you're going to get rewarded. And that's what happened there. So I thought that was a really interesting and fascinating and it was a feel good result, I thought. And that's the kind of stuff that we like to see in racing because it keeps everybody coming back. You never know when your horse is going to step up in the biggest of stages. We mentioned earlier that the Keeneland Fall Meet kicks off this Friday. It's always one of the most exciting and most beautiful meets of the year. So we're super excited about that. And it starts with Fall Stars Weekend. We'll get to it later in the show. We're going to preview some of the grade 1s and grade 2s and Breeders' Cup winning urine races that are going on over the weekend at Keeneland. So that'll be something to look forward to for sure. Keeneland really gets center stage this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's grade 1 races all 3 days. The Darley Alcibiades is Friday. That's the feature for 2-year-old fillies, grade 1. Saturday's list of grade 1s includes the Breeders' Futurity for 2-year-old colts. Colts, the First Lady, the Shadwell Turf Mile. And Sunday, we're going to get to see the filly and mare divisional leader Latruska in her final prep for the Breeders' Cup. She's going to run in the Juddmonte Spinster Stakes, and tickets are going fast. They have full capacity now this fall. So if you're in the area or if you've ever been trying to go to Keeneland, now is the time to do it. It's going to be a great atmosphere. Get out there. And also the catalog for the 2021 Keeneland November sale was released yesterday. A total of 3,594 head have been cataloged. It's the 78th edition of the premier breeding stock sale. And the auction starts with a 1-day book one on Wednesday, November 10th, and it'll run through November 19th. So with that, we'll be right back after this message from Keeneland. Owning potential future superstars like Flightline is attainable with a racing partnership with West Point Thoroughbreds. Partnerships enable you to spread your ownership across several horses for less than it costs to own one horse alone. This increases your racetrack action and your chances for a big horse. Learn more about why West Point Thoroughbreds is the gold standard in racing partnerships at westpointtb.com. This week, West Point announced the retirement of Galilean, who was a California bred by Uncle Mo. It was a 6-time stakes winner for West Point and partners Denise Baker and William Sandbrook. Very nice, hard-knocking horse. Last year, the John Sadler trainee earned champion California bred older male honors. Congrats to all the partners. Great career. West Point star Flightline, who I mentioned, is working towards his stakes debut in the Malibu, where I think we're all counting down the days till we get to see him again because he's one of the most exciting horses I've seen in maybe a decade. The Malibu is going to be December 26th at Santa Anita. The $1 million son of Tapit was last seen dismantling an allowance optional claiming field at Del Mar by 12 lengths. of a 114 buyer was still reeling from that performance. And West Point has several runners pointing for opening weekend at Keeneland with Cavalry Charge and Faith Runner, as well as Sequist in the Alcibiades on Friday. All making starts for Dallas Stewart, plus County Final is nominated for the Grade 2 Woodford Stakes, going 5.5 furlongs on the turf on Saturday. So best of luck to all the partners. Going to be a action-packed weekend this weekend at Keeneland for them. All right, can we get the Law and Order gavel sound to start this segment as is our trademark now, because we've done so much of this Bob Baffert versus Naira legal drama. But yesterday in Eastern District Court and federal court here in Brooklyn, New York, I was there. I was playing a court reporter for the day, so that was fun. Judge Carol Begley-Amen tossed out Bob Baffert and his attorney's claim of contempt against Naira. That was their attempt to stop the hearing process that Naira announced last month would go forward against Baffert and Marcus Vitale to potentially eventually suspend them. This was, Bob Baffert's attorney, Craig Robertson, made a lot of different arguments, none of which really seemed to move the judge. This was like kind of one of those scenarios where you could tell very early on how the judge was leaning towards ruling, because, she kept interrupting Craig Robertson early on, and just was really tossing out all of his arguments. She was basically saying, Craig Robertson was trying to argue that this was that Naira created this hearing process ex post facto to try to enforce the original suspension that was enjoined the night before Saratoga, which let Bob Baffert run at Saratoga, and as he's been able to run at Naira tracks since then. The judge did not agree with that. She said this is a completely separate process. This was not related. All she did in the earlier injunction was block Naira from enforcing the suspension that they tried to enforce May 17th, which was right after the Preakness, after the whole Medina Spirit controversy came down. She said that was completely separate from this proceeding. She said, basically, you asked for a hearing. That's what Naira is giving you right now. What I enjoined was them suspending Bob Baffert without any hearing, without any chance to present evidence, without any opportunity to answer the charges against him. She basically said that now he has all of those opportunities in this Naira hearing process. Now, Craig Robertson came back and said, that he basically said it's a kangaroo court, that, the hearing officer is appointed by Naira. The panel that the hearing officer is going to make the recommendation to is appointed by Naira and David O'Rourke. And David O'Rourke has already expressed, support for the suspension of Bob Baffert. Judge was a little bit more sympathetic to that, but she said, essentially, I can't prejudge these kind of things that haven't happened yet, and therefore I'm going to dismiss the request for a stay and the contempt charge, because the contempt, I'm not a lawyer, but contempt of court seems like a pretty high bar to clear. You have to really prove that the defendant is really strongly violating the initial order, which was the injunction that the judge ruled on earlier in the summer. It's a little bit over my head, but it was interesting to see the judge kind of have very little time for Craig Robertson and for all of his arguments. And it looks like the hearing process is going to go forward. Now, if I were a betting man, I would say that Bob Baffert is going to be suspended by Naira. I don't think it's going to be for life. I think it'll probably end up being something similar to the Churchill Downs suspension, where he gets like a year or two, or maybe a couple of years. But it seems now that he is out of options when it comes to suing to try to stop Naira from going through with this hearing process. And it is going to go through, and it's probably going to end up in him being suspended. Any thoughts, Bill?
Yeah, looking back on this, it appears that this whole legal challenge by Baffert's team to stop Naira from holding the hearing and the whole contempt charge was a Hail Mary. And, basically, it kind of looked that way on paper. Now, I covered the original trial when the Baffert team won and got a restraining order to keep Naira from suspending Baffert without a hearing. And as not being a lawyer, covering these things and understanding everything is, as you well know, Joe, because what you did yesterday, it can be very, very difficult. But I read into that she basically said, you cannot suspend him without due process. Therefore, if you want to suspend him, you must give him a hearing. That's exactly what Naira did, exactly to the letter. And then Robertson and his team come back and say, "Oh, no, you're in contempt of court." That's, the judge said you can. It didn't make any sense. But, you think at the time, well, maybe they know something. No, they didn't. I think, again, was just a Hail Mary, but that's what lawyers do. And, I guess if you throw 100 Hail Marys and one actually lands in the end zone, then you have done your job. But Joe, we can see the way this is going to go forward now. He is going to have a hearing, and, who knows? You would think that the hearing would lead to Naira suspending him. I would think that my guess would be it would be 2 years, because that's what Churchill Downs has done. They've kind of set the precedent there. Maybe it'll be a little bit less, but, in the back and forth in the courts and everything that's going on with Baffert, he's won some battles, he's lost some battles. This was a big loss from yesterday.
Yeah, and it was just, it struck me as one of the reasons that lawyers bill by the hour. Because I'm sure there was plenty of prep work and travel and court time that Craig Robertson has been billing Bob Baffert for this whole time, when probably, like you're saying, knowing that he was not likely to win this particular motion. And yeah, I mean, it was actually very interesting to be there and to hear all the legal arguments in person, because I don't know, maybe you felt this way or not, Bill, but it's to me, it was clearer when you're actually in the courtroom than when you're reading it on paper. When you're reading all the legalese, it becomes like, your head starts to spin. But when you're there in person, you can kind of hear the judge's tone and the back and forth. I think it is a little bit easier to understand. And yeah, it just, it seemed from the jump yesterday that the judge was not going to hear this contempt charge, and it was too high of a bar. And like you said, it was just kind of a last ditch Hail Mary for Craig Robertson and Bob Baffert. And look, just to be fair, Naira, probably should have done this from the jump. They should have had a hearing process from the jump. Obviously, it was a little murky because, there was that whole thing about whether or not Naira was a state actor or a private company. And there are different laws that apply whether or not you're part of the state or your own private corporation. So that probably was a little bit, kind of threw them for a loop. Nevertheless, they probably should have had a hearing process for him from the jump, but now they do, and they said in court, the Naira attorney said yesterday in court, listen, we listened to every word, every syllable of the injunction decision, and we took that to heart, and we created a hearing process that would give him his due process. And, we took that as guidance from the court. So I don't know, there's no real reason to hold us in contempt for doing exactly what the order and what the Baffert attorneys wanted us to do from the jump. So we'll see how it goes. We'll watch this space. We'll keep everyone posted on how the hearing process goes. Like I said, it's supposed to start October 11th, which is next Monday. And yeah, probably going to end up in a suspension for Bob Baffert as well as Marcus Vitale. And we'll just see where it goes from there. We'll see how long it is. But yeah, it was a fun summer, Bill. It was a fun summer of legal back and forth and the law.
It's not over. It's nowhere near over.
All right. Well, this part of it is over, at least I think. They're throwing up their hands now, and they're just going to go through with the hearing process and see what happens. Joining the West Point Thoroughbreds partnership can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie among people surrounding high-class horses and stakes action for a fraction of the cost of trying to do it on your own. Learn more at westpointtb.com. We'll be right back after this message from West Point Thoroughbreds.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Legacy Bloodstock. Do you think that 50 years combined experience in the horse business could benefit your program? Give Tommy or Wendy a call. They personally advise on each horse as if they were their own. Stakes winner and graded place Moon Swag picked up her 5th black type check over the weekend in the Seneca Overnight Stakes at Churchill. Legacy grad, daughter of Malibu Moon, was a $150,000 Keeneland September Legacy grad in 2019. She'll go through the ring again with Legacy at the upcoming Facing Tipton November sale. And Ain't Easy, who we touched on earlier in the weekend recap, was very impressive in winning the Chandelier Stakes. Is also a Legacy grad. Daughter of Intermister, bred by Spendthrift Farm, was a $400,000 Keeneland September purchase. So yet another graded stakes performer and graded stakes winner for Legacy. Congratulations to Tommy and Wendy on that one as well. So Equibase released the first 3 quarters of the year's economic indicators, basically the handle figures, field size, purses, all that stuff yesterday. And there were some positive signs of growing handle. Bill did the story yesterday, so I'll toss it to him for his takeaways.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, this was good news. Absolutely. And the numbers came out, and even though month to month from year to year, handle was down in September, that was easily explainable because the Kentucky Derby was run in September last year and obviously wasn't this year. But the overall picture for the year, through the first 3 quarters of 2021, betting is up 13.8% over 2020. And you might say, well, of course it is, because there was COVID last year, there was still there's all these shutdowns, et cetera. So I'm glad they did this. I don't think they've done this in the past. They also put out figures comparing handle in 2021 versus handle in 2019, which is a more of an apples to apples comparison. And wagering was up 10.52% over 2019. And if this continues, there's no reason to suggest that it won't. Racing is going to handle more in 2021 than it has in any year since 2010. And Joe, I want to get you in this conversation because I'm sure you have an opinion on this. We've been asking all along, did racing pick up new customers during the pandemic when there was, other than, literally like ping pong, there was nothing else to bet on for several months with no sports. And, I got to think you look at this and say the answer is yes, because, these numbers, these advances came out of the blue. For years, racing was either down every year or just even, there was no expansion, no growth whatsoever. Now, all of a sudden in 2021, we're seeing pretty impressive numbers. So something is going on here.
Yeah, and I think the most important stat, because there has been such variation in the calendar the last 2 years, I think the most important stat when these figures are released is average wagering per race day, because I think that's really the only apples to apples comparison you can make, and that I thought was the most positive thing. I'm quoting from Bill's story here. When comparing 2021 to 2019 year-to-date figures, handle has risen 21.32% in the category of average wagering per race day. That's undeniable to me. You can talk about all the variables with the Derby being in September and fewer race days and now more race days. Average wagering per race day is the figure, is the bellwether statistic, I think, for whether or not racing is gaining customers. And I think, you kind of have to say that they have. I am excited about that. My enthusiasm is just tempered a little bit by the field size numbers. That is still a major issue. And field size was down to 7.16 so far this year. And that is not good. It hasn't been great in recent years. I think it's more so been in the high sevens. That is the kind of thing that I think might stop or reverse any kind of positive handle trends, because people need bigger field size to bet more. You just need more horses running. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the future with declining foal crops and still too many racetracks and probably too many race days in general going on. So that would be my one kind of mitigating factor of getting too excited about this, is that field size is still going down, and that's a major problem. But yeah, overall, I've been saying this, that I think racing did pick up some customers in 2020. I think, we probably didn't take as much advantage as we should have of being the only game in town for all that time. But I think we did take advantage to a certain extent. And I think a lot of it is really due to that NYRA show being on TV every day, the NYRA Fox Sports show, just to have that kind of visibility, I think helped a lot and got a lot of new people in the game that wouldn't necessarily have tried betting on racing before. And it might be small, but I think the crypto thing, I think the Zed Run thing is bringing new people into the game as well. I think that there are at least some avenues now for people to get involved in racing that don't traditionally get involved in the sport. And, it's on the racing powers that be to capitalize on it. And this is, again, an issue where it would benefit us to have a functioning governing body and a unified marketing arm. And I just, there are some people who are trying to do that. I think of America's Best Racing, but overall, I think it's not something that racing does all that well. And it's kind of left to the individual tracks and the individual track operators to try to market the sport. I think, marketing handicapping contests would be a big thing, even though that doesn't directly contribute to handle all the time. I think that's a big way to get people who maybe used to that tournament environment in poker or whatever to cross over and try betting the horses. But yeah, I mean, this is something to be happy about in a sport where there's a lot of bad news and a lot of you kind of feel like racing circling the drain in a lot of ways. This is something to stand in contrast to that. And I think it's good news. And, I'm interested to see at the very end of the year what the year-end handle numbers are compared to 2020 and 2019. But yeah, so far so good. As long as that average wagering per race day number stays high and improves over the last couple of years, I think there is definitely stuff to feel good about. We'll be right back after this message from Legacy Bloodstock.
Being a small family business, I guess we're part of a dying breed. We're really grateful for the people that entrust us. We know it's a huge responsibility.
We're always with your horse every step of the way. When it comes to being at the sales ground, showing your horses, we are with your horse.
Just driving up and down the road every day, there's not a time that I don't look out and feel a responsibility to the sport, the animal, the people that come to invest in the game. I want to see as many people enjoy this sport as they possibly can, because we do have the most beautiful sport in the world.
The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. With over 500 clients in the horse business, they have proven strategies to save you taxes. Learn more about how they can help you at www.greenco.com. So I'm so thrilled this week to welcome into the show one of the greatest handicappers, I think, of all time, and one of the greatest turf riders of all time, Steve Crist. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks very much.
So glad you made time. Just a basic general question off the top from me. You faded back from the public a little bit. I remember reading your Saratoga blog. It was one of my favorite reads during the summer. What are you up to these days? How much are you betting? I know you're involved with owning a couple of horses. What's a day in the life like for Steve Crist now these days?
Yeah, well, I formally retired 5 years ago and started racing a few horses. And we're up to 5 horses at the moment. We have a 5-year-old Mineshaft broodmare who's in full Divino Rosso. We have a 4-year-old Verrazano filly. We're still trying to break her maiden. We almost won a race at Saratoga. We have a 3-year-old named Thin White Duke who won a couple of stakes last year. He's on the sidelines, but he'll be back next year. And we have a 2-year-old Candy Ride filly and a Frosted Yearling. So that's keeping me a little bit busy, and I'm playing the races every day at NYRA.
What's your handle like compared to in the past? You betting more or less? What's going on with that?
Really about the same. I'm mostly a pick 5 and pick 6 player, and I've found my comfort level over the years. So I've been playing and just came off a pretty intense meeting at Saratoga and back to playing Belmont Fall and looking ahead to the Breeders' Cup.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much for joining us. And I'm glad you're still putting it through the windows. It puts a smile on my face. But if you're doing that now, you're going up against a form of competition that didn't exist 25 years ago. And I'm talking about the computer players. And to me, they've made the game so much harder to beat for everybody else. What's your take on what they're doing? And in some ways, has it affected your wagering?
Oh, it's absolutely affected my bottom line. They've made it a lot harder to win. And I think that the CAW players are going to become a bigger and bigger issue in racing going forward. It's a very peculiar situation when, in some cases, you have racetracks having financial interest in these CAW groups. It's been reported the Stronach Group is involved in the ownership of some of these people. And it hurts all the other players. Because if you have some people who are getting back before rebates 95% of their handle, well, that means that everybody else is getting back closer to 65% of the handle. And takeout was bad enough. My hat's off to anyone who can figure out a way to beat this game. But it's not a good situation for the everyday player.
Yeah, and NYRA did something interesting during the summer, which was cut off the wagers for those CAW wagerers with 2 minutes to post, and you didn't see as many of those late odds drops throughout the meet, which I think was pretty satisfying for regular horse players. But just kind of a broad question to piggyback off of that, I thought that was a good move. I figure you would agree with that. What are some other things that you think racing can be doing to make it easier for the meat and potatoes horse player? Besides just lowering takeout, are there any other ideas that you would have?
I don't have any magic solutions. I think it is good that NYRA is at least cognizant of the effect that the CAW players are having on the pools. They supposedly keep them out of the late pick 5 pool at NYRA. But, there are a lot of ways into the bank other than the front door. So I think the CAW players are here to stay. The whole thing just kind of smells like money laundering in a lot of ways. And I hope we're not talking about the big money laundering scandal a year or two down the road.
Hey, Steve, since we haven't had you on yet in the show, which is probably a mistake on our part, I want to go way back to the March of 2020 and get your take on the Service Navarro situation. What was your reaction to that? And also, if you want to piggyback off that, what might HISA mean for racing when and if it gets passed?
The Navarro and Service stuff, I think every horse player, everyday horse player knew that these guys were cheating. This was not exactly I'm shocked to learn, what these guys were doing. The routine form reversals and the accompanying floods of money on their horses. You knew what was going on. And I'm delighted that, racing finally went after actual cheaters, instead of continuing to dither about racing, on Lasix and accusing every prominent trainer of cheating, who wins at a 25% rate. These are two entirely different things. And I hate to see racing having wasted so much time on issues like Lasix instead of going after real cheaters.
Yeah, and we try to talk about broad scope issues on the show, and I think there are several competing things that are going on right now. We've got the decline in foal crops. We've got some racetracks closing. I think overall more tracks need to close. We need some kind of consolidation to be healthier and more sustainable for the future. It's unfortunate that Arlington and some of those tracks that people really enjoy and still go to are closing. But what are your thoughts on that in terms of the landscape? Do you think we need fewer tracks? Do you think we need less racing? And if so, by how much?
We need a little less racing. It's contracted pretty well, I think, up to this point. I think we also need to be realistic about the fact that we have half as many horses as we did 10 years ago, and to continue to pretend that we should be running the same number of grade 1 races and graded stakes when you have half the horse population is kind of ridiculous. Look at the field size for all those Breeders' Cup preps last weekend. You had, I think, 13 races, and 10 of them were won by the favorite and 3 of them were won by the second choice. These races are becoming kind of progressively uninteresting because the crop has shrunk and because you have a bunch of 5-horse fields every weekend.
Hey, Steve, people may not know this about you, but you also cut your teeth in the greyhound world, where you were a big greyhound racing fan, and I know you love the animal. You've adopted a couple greyhounds. Greyhound racing is gone. For all practical purposes, it's been put out of business. Is that a wake-up call for horse racing? Should horse racing think this could happen to us someday as well? And what mistakes did the greyhound industry make that were avoidable and might have saved the day for them at the end of the day?
I think that they made a big mistake in not responding to all the false allegations about it. And I think there is a lesson there for thoroughbred racing. You had greyhound racing shut down unnecessarily because animal rights groups just lied about how dangerous it was and dogs getting hurt. I think in the last 8 years of greyhound racing in Massachusetts, for example, there were 7 fatalities in 8 years. It was a very, very safe sport. But you had groups springing up saying, it's this terrible, dangerous thing. And the industry didn't respond to it. They said, well, these people will go away. I think similarly, thoroughbred racing industry has been way too appeasing of PETA and its publicity-seeking stunts and protests. And I think racing needs to do more of just standing up and saying, this isn't true. The people in the industry do care about the animals. They're doing a much better job of looking after them. Don't sit back passively, or you could end up like greyhound racing.
Also wanted to get your take on the, not to go all negative, but I want to get your take on the Bob Baffert thing and the saga that we've seen this year with Medina Spirit. My feeling was that this was a relatively minor drug overage, but he kind of has been let slide over the years by regulators. And that kind of led to the point where he embarrassed the sport on a national stage, even if it wasn't necessarily something that was performance enhancing or why the horse won the race. What has been your impression of the Bob Baffert saga this year and kind of the fallout from that?
I'm on the same page as you are. I think it's too bad that people have been led to think, Medina Spirit won the Derby because he was on drugs. It's ridiculous. The amount of the finding. Nobody is arguing that it affected his performance or that this is a juice drug that makes horses run faster. But that's the impression you leave with the general public. I don't think he did anything nefarious. But come on, when you start talking about 5, 6, 7, whatever the number is now, positives over a short period of time, at the very least, it was a sloppily run operation. But, to liken this to Navarro and Service, I think is ridiculous. It's not the same thing.
Right.
Steve, let me stay on that subject. And we don't know how some of these things are going to work their way out through the court system and the hearing for NYRA. But it appears that at this point in time, there's the very good possibility that Baffert will not be allowed to run in next year's Derby and the Derby afterwards, which I would think would be devastating to his operation. It also looks that he's going to be out of NYRA for about 2 years as well. Does the punishment fit the crime in this situation?
I don't know that it does. And I have some trouble with the due process issues involved here. What has he been proven and convicted of at this point? And I know that everyone in racing wants to kind of pound their fists and go, we can't tolerate this anymore and we have to do something. I don't know that without a confirmed positive finding that it's really fair to do that to somebody.
All right. I wanted to ask about, you talked about the ownership experience you've had. You've gotten more and more involved on that side of the game. Can you talk about maybe if that's giving you a different perspective at all? Because I know it's a different perspective being a writer and being a handicapper. I got to think being an owner as well has given you a different viewpoint of the races.
Yeah, I got to say it's been more fun than I expected. It really is. There's a different kind of enjoyment and a different kind of rooting that goes on when it's your horse. So I've thoroughly enjoyed that part of it. I've also had my eyes even more open to the fact that it's so difficult for people to stay in this game now. Unless you're a plutocrat or a super trainer, this industry has become very, very hard to make a living in. Our trainer, Phil Gleaves, retired at the end of the Saratoga meeting, in part because it's just so hard to make a go of it as a small stable these days. Hiring help and workman's comp and all these other issues have really made it hard for smaller trainers to stay in business. And that's not a healthy thing long-term for the game. I don't think we want to just end up with 10 super stables and no small outfits in American racing. That's not going to be good.
Steve, I can't thank you enough for coming on and answering all these questions. I got to say, you are a personal hero of mine. You're one of the reasons that I got into racing journalism. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights, man. We really appreciate it.
That's very nice of you to say, and I got to give Bill a shout out on the Red Sox.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Steve.
We already got into it. He doesn't need any more props for the Red Sox.
Well, I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, so I'm having a good year.
All right.
I see that. Yeah, good luck to your boys the rest of in the playoffs.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate it, Steve. Thanks. The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by the Green Group, an accounting, tax, consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. As this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Steve Crist will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. Learn more at greenco.com. We'll be right back after this message from the Green Group.
Why do the most successful owners, breeders, and horsemen select the Green Group as their tax advisor? We simply save them money and know how to make them more successful. Over the past 40 years, founder Leonard Green has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport. His in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with cutting-edge tax-saving strategies, has produced positive results for his clientele and has made the Green Group the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the business. For a confidential and complimentary consultation, contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes.
Okay, so last week we introduced our first contest that solicited entries and submissions from the audience, and damn, did you guys respond. We got 72 entries for the Name the Colt contest presented by Honor Code and Lane's End. Now, if you weren't here last week, John Green and DJ Stable bought a yearling colt at Keeneland September by Honor Code out of Nicky New, and we're going to John is going to name the horse as long as it gets by the Jockey Club, but after the winner of this submission contest. So we got, like I said, 72 entries. The way it's going to work is all three of us, me, Bill, and John, are going to pick one name that we like every single week, and we're going to do it for 3 weeks. And then Patty, our producer, is going to get a pick too. So we're going to get 10 finalists. Everybody gets an Honor Code hat. So everybody that's a finalist gets to go home with something. And then at the end of those 4 weeks, we're going to pick the winner. And then as long as it gets by the Jockey Club, your name will be seen on the racetrack next year and hopefully in years to come. All right, so let's read off the first 3 finalists. Let me put my specs on for this one. So John picked Whistleblower, which is a good one, by Betsy Tarr from Woodbury, New York. Shout out to Betsy. Bill has picked Don't Speak from Deirdre Duke in Roslyn, New York. Lots of New York stuff going on. I always like that. So shout out to Deirdre for that name. And I picked, not even knowing it was his, I picked Stay on Her Good Side by Skip Anderson from Juneau, Wisconsin. Skip, one of our biggest fans. Shout out to Skip. Always appreciate his support and his viewership. So those are our first 3 names: Whistleblower, Don't Speak, and Stay on Her Good Side. So we're going to do 3 every week. We're going to have 10 in the end, and then we're going to, do a big drum roll and a big production and pick the winner at the end. But it's a really exciting contest, and we appreciate the people at Lane's End and Honor Code supporting this and sponsoring this. And we really appreciate all of the support from the viewers and listeners as well, because sometimes we're kind of just like talking into the void here. I have no sense of how many people are watching or listening to us. But when we get all those submissions for something like this, it really warms our heart, and we appreciate you guys responding and engaging with us. So more of that, Sue Finley at thetdn.com. You can email more submissions to her. We're going to keep taking them, and we're going to pick one every week from each of us, and then Patty will pick one as well. And we'll do the top 10. We'll do a big segment about it, and then hopefully your name will be represented on the track next year. If you've ever wanted to name a racehorse, now is the time. John Green's not here either, so we can elbow John out and kind of just maybe pick your name over his if you really make a case for us. So very exciting. We're looking forward to all the rest of the names, and then we'll pick it up more next week with another 3 selections, another 3 finalists. So with that, we'll be right back after this message from Lane's End and Honor Code.
Honor Code. a multiple Grade 1 winner from the final crop of the legendary AP Indy. Never off the board in 11 starts, he was crowned champion older horse before retiring. Now he's living up to the promise of his pedigree, with progeny like Grade 1 winner Honor AP, Grade 3 winner Max Player, and multiple six-figure yearling sales. Honor Code stands to continue his sire's legacy at Lane's End.
So as you see from that little bumper ad, the TDN now has the most subscribers in the industry for our daily publication. We are very excited. Congratulations to Sue Finley, our publisher, and everybody at TDN. It took a lot of hard work to get to the top of the mountain, but we're here now. And we're coming for everybody else. So that's great news. Thanks to everybody who subscribed. And we're going to keep growing and keep putting out great content for y'all, including this here podcast, because there's more news to get to before we wrap up here. This broke last week. I think it was last Friday that Gulfstream Park announced the suspension of 5 trainers for clenbuterol violations. The trainers are Georgina Baxter, Gilberto Zerpa, Peter Walder, Rohan Crichton, and Daniel Pita. Now, if you follow Gulfstream Racing, none of those names were a surprise to you. And Georgina Baxter's had suspensions before in the past. These are among the 5 names you would expect if the track was going to crack down on certain kind of drugs. Just, you get a sense of playing the track every day or playing during the winter, at least, of who is potentially moving up horses now. And, whether or not they were doing this on purpose or this was something that, was left over from before the clenbuterol ban went into place, whatever it may be, Gulfstream cracked down. And I think we were all happy to see it. Clenbuterol, as Mark Cassidy has laid out and other people in the industry have laid out, is a big issue. And it was basically the last kind of major legal performance enhancer, at least in terms of stuff that they can test for right now. So that was a big deal. And I think one of the other big deals was that Aiden Butler had a bunch of good quotes about this. Basically, they're not going to be, during this suspension, they're not going to be able to run their horses in their assistant's name, which I think is a big thing because, that's kind of what's made the enforcement in racing in terms of banning trainers such a joke, is that you can just put the horse in your assistant's name and basically carry on business as usual, even when you're suspended. So that's a big part of it as well. And I think when you do that, you will start to see horses trickle out of those barns a little bit and go to trainers who aren't, in danger of being suspended for this kind of stuff. The fines are still not going to be, anything significant. I think there's only $1,000, but I think that they're kind of restricted based on gaming commission rules in terms of how much the max fine can be for trainers like this. And also Aiden Butler said that, I'm quoting here. He said, "We did some more this week. This is not a one-off. This is what we're going to be starting to do now. Out of competition testing is key. We're basically sick to death of people skirting the rules. We're not going to stand for this. We're pushing extremely hard now. Anybody that doesn't want to do the right thing is going to face the same treatment." Yes. Thank you, Aiden Butler. Somebody who gets it and somebody who is trying to do something about people that are trying to skirt the rules and to try to give themselves an illegal advantage in racing. I think that racing needs more executives like that who really understand the severity of the problem and who are doing something proactive about it, including out of competition testing. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, a couple other angles to the story. One of the reasons why Gulfstream had to do this, because this should be the job of a racing commission. That Florida, more or less doesn't even have a racing commission. So you don't have a racing commission, you don't have investigators, what kind of testing do you have? But, the other thing that I thought of about this, Joe, is why isn't everybody doing this? Good for Gulfstream. And maybe it goes on more than we know, because maybe they, do out of competition testing. They don't catch anybody. But, the sport has to be proactive, and this is a tool that it can use. This sort of stuff, and I'm glad to hear Aiden Butler say, this is the first of many of these things. They tested, they went after 10 trainers, half of them flunked, half did not have the computer positive. That in and of itself is alarming. Now, I imagine they kind of, like you said, they kind of knew, wink, wink, who are the guys to take a look at, because this list of trainers, included some people that, that I think most people were at least a little bit suspicious of. But good for them. Keep it up. And every track should be doing this and doing this regularly to try to crack out this thing.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing that we got into when the Service and Navarro indictments came down. Now, I'm not saying this is the same severity of what those guys were allegedly in some case proven to be doing. I'm just saying, I'm just relating that at the time we were like, there's a lot of other people that are bending the rules and breaking the rules. This can't be the end of racing's enforcement and cracking down on cheaters. And, it seems like that's not going to be the case. But it takes people like Aiden Butler and Sal Sinatra and real no nonsense regulators to step in and do something, because there's been such lax enforcement and regulation of racing for so long. And I think that these clenbuterol bans have really given license to people like Aiden Butler to go in there and to actually find the people who are breaking the rules. And it shouldn't come down to him. Like Bill says, this should be the job of the gaming commissions and the racing commissions, that oversee these tracks in these states, to actually have an enforcement arm and to have a strict regulatory policy. And they just don't do it. They just are asleep at the switch. So it takes kind of rogue, Elliot Ness type characters to come in and actually do something about it. So shout out to Aiden Butler and the Gulfstream. Also want to mention that Gulfstream opened the Topeka track last week or the week before. So Gulfstream, I think, is doing a lot of really good things right now. And it shows you what happens when you have a parent company that actually cares about racing and about improving the product and about creating a safer, more even playing field for everybody that's involved in racing, as opposed to some other parent companies that won't be named that just want the casino money and then bring the wrecking ball to the tracks as soon as they get the first chance. So this is a positive development. Like we said, no real surprise in terms of the trainers who got busted. And there needs to be more of this. I don't care about, people's reputations being sullied, even if it was like a withdrawal issue or, there was some kind of technicality that made some of these horses flunk the clenbuterol test. I don't care. I've had enough of people that you can see just watching the races and handicapping every day are taking an edge, and nothing ever comes of it. So we'll watch for more of those suspensions, but that takes balls from Aiden Butler and Gulfstream, because those people fill a lot of stalls at that track, and he doesn't care, and it doesn't matter. It's about cleaning up the game, and thank God we need more people like that. So we mentioned earlier in the Keeneland pop that Keeneland's got a lot of action this weekend. The two Keeneland meets of the year. I'm not just saying this because they're a sponsor. Along with Saratoga, I think those are the meets that people look forward to the most in general throughout the year. So the Keeneland Fall Meet especially is really beautiful and really fun, because there are all those Breeders' Cup preps, which a lot of them are going to happen this weekend. This is really the last big weekend of Breeders' Cup preps. There might be a couple one-off races next weekend that someone could springboard from. But this weekend, we got the Darley Alcibiades on Friday, which is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. We've got the Stoll Keenan Ogden Phoenix Stakes, which is a grade 2 for older sprinters. Also a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So on Saturday, we got the big day. We got the First Lady Stakes, the Keeneland Turf Mile. I keep calling it the Shadwell Turf Mile. It's actually the Keeneland Turf Mile now. Also a win and you're in. Claiborne Breeders' Futurity for 2-year-old colts, the Thoroughbred Club of America Stakes, which is a grade 2 for older fillies and mares sprinting. It's a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. And we also got the Woodford Stakes presented by TVG. It's a grade 2 for older sprinters on the turf. Also on Sunday at Keeneland, we've got a bunch of other action. We got the Spinster Stakes, which I mentioned. We're going to see Latruska in the Indian Summer, which is for 2-year-olds going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. That's a win and you're in for the Juvenile Turf Sprint. And then also a win and you're in is the Castle and Key Bourbon Stakes, which is for 2-year-olds going 1 mile and a 16. So that'll be a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf route. And not to slight Belmont, we got some action at Belmont over the weekend as well. We got the Vosburg Stakes, which is a grade 2 on Saturday for older sprinters, as well as the Matron Stakes, which is a grade 3 for 2-year-old fillies sprinting on the turf, the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, which somehow is not a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Turf. Like I don't understand that. It's a grade 1 going 1.5 miles for $500,000. But that's on Saturday. And then Sunday, we've got the Beldame and the Futurity. The Futurity is grade 3 for 2-year-old sprinters on the turf. Somehow that is a win in your in race, but not the Joe Hirsch. But I digress. So a lot of action this weekend at Keeneland and Belmont. Very, very much looking forward to that Keeneland fall meet. So I think, like I said, we're going to have the Breeders' Cup fields basically set and have the ideas of who's going to run and the matchups we can expect to see. Next week, we'll really start to dive into the Breeders' Cup and what we're looking forward to. All right, so that's going to do it for this week's edition of the TDN Writers Room, presented by Keeneland. The Keeneland Fall Meet starts Friday, October 8th, and runs through October 30th. Also, the Keeneland November catalog is now available online. You can find that on the Keeneland website. I want to thank Bill Finley. John Green, we miss you, brother. We really miss you. I'm joking a little bit with you before, but we hope you feel better, and we hope you're back next week. I also want to thank our Green Group guest of the week, Steve Crist, our producer, Patty Wolf, our associate producer, Katie Petruniak, and our editors, Anthony LaRocca, Aaliyah LaRocca, and Nathan Wilkinson. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you next week, and keep sending in those names for the honor code Nikki Newcole to Sue Finley at thetdn.com. See y'all next week.
The November sale is a destination event for buyers and sellers around the world.
It's where programs are built, breeders reload and buy for the future.
The Keeneland November sale is opportunity.
The Keeneland November sale has always been such a prominent event for our industry and continues to be.
You look at examples like Fred Mitchell back in 2006, who bought Leslie's Lady for $100,000. That's life-changing. That's what it means to a lot of people.
Royal Delta, I recall Ryan Mahan noting what a tremendous birthday present that was for Mr. Leon's wife on the day that she sold. Lady Eli, Take Charge Brandy, Stellar Wind, phenomenal offerings that rarely come to market, and it's been exciting to be a part of those sales.
Really excited about the changes we've made to the horses of racing age portion of the sale. The timing of the horses of racing age section is really well suited to the industry.
There is a renewed excitement for living and for doing what we really enjoy. And we're excited to bring that and set the stage. That's what we do at Keeneland, we set the stage.
The ambiance during the September sale was incredible.
As we move into Keeneland November, I think people will find a new experience, a new atmosphere, new optimism, a new team that is built and dedicated to what is the future. I think it's important that anybody who participates, buying and selling, that when they participate in Keeneland, they're reinvesting in the industry. That is the mission, that is the goal, that is what the team is dedicated to.
Every single day we come to work and we try to decide what's the right thing to do.
It allows us to build for the future, and the future is bright.
The future is bright at Keeneland November.